Jack's upgraded to Zoom Premium just for us.
That's it. I've got upgraded to Zoom Premium, and this is my first podcast on Zoom Premium. This is going to be either really good or it's going to go back down to the free version. But anyway, look, welcome to the show, Jonny and Yusef from Propane Fitness. Guys, first of all, thank you very much for joining me. This is the first time I've talked to you on a proper set with like my own microphone and not over a shitty Instagram live back and forth over what I think. Last time we recorded it on Zoom, but I was doing it on my iPhone. It was a really bad show.
It was an impressive solution. You had a camera facing two laptops with a walkie-talkie in the background, and it was like a big relay call. It was great.
It was thinking on my feet 101, that's for sure. It was really, really good. But look, guys, thanks again for joining. Look, I wanted to dive straight in and just kind of like cover your awesome story. Like, I've known about you guys for probably about 18 months or so, and have obviously worked with you and have seen what you've done. But the story started many years before that. So take me back to the beginning. What started Propane Fitness? Where did you guys meet? How did it all come about?
Who's getting the hot potato?
Whenever Yusuf and I do interviews together, there's always this like look at each other of like, who's going to answer the question?
Right, I'm throwing it Yusef's way first.
Okay. Jonny will be pleased. So we set up Propane Fitness in 2008, really as a sounding board, like just as a way for us to get our ideas of training and diet down on paper, because born out of a kind of frustration with bullshit in the fitness industry. And over time, it started to just kind of organically gain some traction. This was back in the day on the internet where you could post an article about like what is hypertrophy and rank on the top page of Google for it. So it was a very different kind of world, and we would get these inquiries. We charged $7.99, I think, for our first training program, and since then
it was $9.99. It was a bit more high ticket.
Don't undersell yourself. Come on, high end stuff back then.
So we ended up doing that over time. Learned a lot of lessons and made a lot of mistakes along the way. We've coached 3,000 clients since then between us, and now we help PTs do the same thing, taking the systems that we used to build Propane and apply that to a wide range of different experts in the online space.
And when you say you've coached 3,000 people, am I right in saying that that's 3,000 people that for training in terms of fitness and nutrition and health and that sort of thing? Or are we talking about just coaching in what you guys do best, which is clearly building businesses, but also on your fitness and health knowledge as well?
So it's 3,000. I think it's like on its way to 4,000.
Amazing.
Of just fitness clients. The business side is like 10% of that. So it's like 400 people. But the fitness stuff, we've been doing that a long time. Like as Yusuf says, like I can't remember when we got our first client. I can remember our first client. Like we coached them together for $9.99 over Facebook Messenger. But yeah,
love that.
Yusuf's left out a bit of the story that's like more embarrassing from my side of things, but it actually started with me. I think I suggested that we set up something called Optimum Fitness Systems, which, I thought, how unique is that? Like no one could possibly have that name. When I think actually there was, at the time, like Yusuf's first thought was to Google it, and there was,
I think it was 550,000 entries.
There was a few. Yeah, there was a couple.
So then where did Propane come from? Come on, there's got to be some story there.
It was just a joke.
It was actually a joke.
So it was like a placeholder joke. We were thinking of a name for the website it's called Blogger, which I don't think exists anymore. But it's like basically think of Wix, but free and way more rudimentary. And we set up we had a purple logo with a green background, very stylish. And we just needed a name. So we were like, Propane Fit, because like propane's really explosive and gas. And
unfortunately, I lived with a chemist at the time, and she was like, Yusef, you are aware that propane actually burns at quite a low temperature and it burns with a yellow flame? And I was like, thanks, mate. Ruining it for all of us.
We picked it because we're like, that's got to be jet fuel. Is that what jets use? It's probably well, actually, it's what like the patio heater and family barbecues use, which is not quite as impressive.
So you basically your logo was representing the people that kind of like walk to the kitchen and back, kind of on twice a day kind of fitness, rather
like
than
in the gas world. Shit, like you don't want propane's like a very safe household gas. So that's what we are.
There's a great business lesson in there, isn't there?
Absolutely, that is it. That's exactly my next point. You know, if you were to go back 10 years, would you still have named it Propane Fitness?
I don't think it's one of those things, isn't it? Like you don't know whether it's harmed you or not. Like it's okay, everything's fine, but it might be more fine if we'd put more thought into the name.
I mean, if we'd called it like a really SEO friend, like how to gain muscle while losing fat fitness.com, and then you just rank automatically because of your brand name.
So we've actually had the same problem happen, but with good consequences this time, where when we launched Propane Business, we tried to buy propanebusiness.com, we tried to get the Propane Business podcast, and we couldn't get either, because basically, especially in the US, like the propane business is quite a big thing. Like it's quite a big business. So the guy who had propanebusiness.com wanted, I mean, it goes up a lot, doesn't it? It's like...
He wanted 36 grand for the domain.
Yeah. So obviously we're all right, mate. Like we'll pass. So we went for propane-business.com, just a sneaky workaround. But we called the podcast just Grow Your Online Fitness Business, thinking like, oh, just put something in. And people are finding the podcast because it's called that. So swings and roundabouts. I think that's like the positive karma for all the times people have commented on an ad referencing Hank from King of the Hill, who sells propane and propane accessories.
Love that. Is that why sometimes, Yusef, whenever I've listened to a few of your podcasts and you start it off by saying, I don't know how you guys found this podcast, but if you want to go back and listen to any of our other ones, you can find it here at propanebusiness.com.
If you are a patio heater reseller and you come across this podcast, then great, you're about to get into the best shape of your life and not understand why.
Well, I want to know is the guy that in America who was trying to charge you 36 grand for the domain name, like what was his podcast about? I mean, how much was it actually about propane gas?
So it was just a domain. He just had it parked, so I find these guys so funny because they give it the big in and they're like, oh yeah, 36 grand. But it's like, all right, mate, like you're welcome to sit on that domain and just wait for someone to try and buy it. But like it's bird in the hand, two in the bush, isn't it?
It can't be based on anything. It's not like he sold propanebusinesspodcast.com before, so he knows the rough market rate. Like, this is just him, like, finger in the air. What's a big number? That's an unreasonable number. I'll charge that for it. And that's basically his business model.
I mean, there's going to be so many people in the next 10 years that are going to be basically either millionaires or complete idiots for buying God knows how many domain names that could mean something in the future. Like, you know, I have a robot.com or buildyourownrobot.com or, you know, order something not from Amazon.com or something on those lines, you know, and they're either going to be super clever or we're going to be having another chat about this in 10 years being like, fuck, I wish I bought those domains. So anyway. Especially
if buildyourownrobot.com ends up being worth millions and we're all sat here going like, yeah, good idea.
I might actually have to go and buy that after this. I'm gonna get like that anxiety feeling if not. Jeez. But what I wanted to touch on was obviously both of you guys obviously into your fitness and stuff, but from what I've seen of you guys, Jonny, you're more into sort of the bodybuilding side of things, and I've seen you lifting heavy and that sort of thing. Whereas Yusef, I've seen you flying around on mushroom top looking gymnastic things and all sorts. So has your I suppose joint vision for fitness always been different, or did you start off in humble beginnings?
It's funny actually. Our own training has always had a weird like performance based slant ourselves, but we're aware that the majority of the market are more interested in fat loss or muscle gain. And so that's always been the main angle that we've taken from a client training perspective. And we have, we certainly subscribe to the view that you need to teach what you do. And if you are a fitness coach, I mean, I really rustled some jimmies the other day tweeting about this, saying, if you're telling people how to get strong on the internet and you don't squat 2.5 times body weight, you've got no business doing so. And like in hindsight, maybe the number was a bit high, but the point stands that like you need to be able to teach what you do. So we did say like, right, we need to just get lean. Like we've got to just walk the walk and do the whole physique thing, get shredded. But the thing that Jonny and I overlap with in our training is we've both competed in powerlifting. I'm obviously far more strong than Jonny, but
for your weight you are.
That's just because I'm only like 4 feet tall, so. But yeah, so that's where we've done the same thing. Just for anyone listening that doesn't get that sarcasm, Jonny has competed at the IPF Worlds and deadlifted close to 320 kilos. 317.
312 in the gym. 301.5 on the platform.
So what? Just to like show
not
the
that
guy who...
not that I know the numbers off the top of my head or anything.
But... So what do you tell girls to impress them? The one in the gym or the one on the stage?
To be honest, you get past a certain number in strength and no one cares anyway. It's like you could say it's like if I said 350, it would mean nothing other, like no more than 210. You know, it's still, whoa, that's a lot of kilos. Like, and everyone goes like, what's that? What is that the same weight as?
Than me.
Yeah, exactly. So like, if it's heavier than anything you may have moved in real life, outside of the gym, people are like, that's a lot. So it doesn't really matter. My
favourite one is, how many bags of sugar is that? Is that 312 bags of sugar? And you're like, well, yeah, 312 kilogram bags, yes.
The best one is when people just don't believe you. That's always an interesting conversation.
They go, prove it.
Yeah, and you're just like, well, hold on, let me just...
And there you go. Yeah. Find it online.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, you could say, well, yeah, come around mine. I've got 24 outside propane patio heaters in which I've actually pushed across my garden twice in a row. That'll prove that I can push that amount, let alone lift it. But yeah,
exactly.
But look, guys, the one thing I found with you, which is amazing, is the whole reason I discovered your incredible business and your ethos and everything was obviously your program. You know, your propane business program that I bought into. and
it's got nothing to do with propane gas.
No, it's got nothing to do with propane gas. And it's warming my garden as we speak. I'm looking out the window. My flatmate Jimmy is having a great time out there. No, it's great. No, your online course is honestly one of the most valuable pieces of content I've ever purchased, because not only has it given me a lot of like grounding and fundamentals to move forward with what I do. And, you know, anyone listening, I'm not in the fitness industry, I'm in the coaching industry. And so it's a very interesting kind of concept to kind of get my head around. But what I want to ask you guys is what made you shift from being someone who just gave people fitness programs online and were happy selling them at $9.99 and spending your money on a Domino's every Friday, versus actually going to, you know, an online platform to help other people such as myself and other online trainers do the same thing?
So when we started the fitness business, we did it, I can't remember what the gap was, but it was quite a while where we were just posting free stuff online. So it was just articles, posts on Facebook, and we both had this resistance to charging anything, because I think every coach has had this like imposter syndrome, I don't know enough, etc., etc. But the sheer kind of anger of how much money we'd spent on supplements and programs up to that point, none of them having worked, led us to this point of like, right, if someone's, you know, when people started asking for coaching, we started selling it. And I think basically the same thing happened with the business stuff. So we still do both, like we still coach the fitness side, but a lot of the clients we had in the fitness business and still are, to be honest, are personal trainers. I think just by the nature of like the people we have on the podcast and the content and stuff. So it started off as this, like we were coaching a few fitness clients where in their check-in, we would talk about business stuff. And it was very like scattered, and you feel like you don't know what you're doing still at the time. It got to the point where like, right, we need to put this into a process for people to follow. And I think, yeah, there's in the same way that like the fitness industry has like the 21-day ab program, like the business industry has the same thing. It's just that there'll never be a calories and progressive overload in the business world, because it's building a business and it's very complicated. There's lots of different things. So a lot of people, and we have done this, we've bought into coaches and programs where we felt, to be honest, like a little bit misled, I think, by what we were sold and then what we were taught. So we just wanted to do something about it. So I think we very much take the view of what we teach in the business coaching is just what we have done, stripped away all of the stuff that we spent lots of time doing that didn't work, and then also what we're doing. So we just, I guess we get around the imposter syndrome side of it by like just teaching the stuff that we have done ourselves, which like links back to what Yusef said about the squat and the 2 times body weight squat thing. Like you should just be teaching what you have had direct experience with yourself. So that's, I think, like that's the journey we went on with it, really.
And what is the common, in terms of the clients that you have now coming to you saying, yes, I need help with this and I need help with that? Like, are you getting problems that pop up that you haven't yet dealt with? Because, we're living in crazy times and it's probably a lot of new material, new, I suppose, new frontier for a lot of people. So are you finding yourself up against learning at the same pace as teaching?
So there's 2 situations that you've described there of new things that have come about from this year. The first one is obviously COVID and the fact that
what's that?
The current situation.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if we're allowed to say it on the YouTube algorithm, but yeah, we've got people who have really had the rug just whipped away from them within 2 weeks, and suddenly it's like, oh, good luck, you're a PT, you've got to go find an online source of revenue. So there's a lot of people that are like, shit, what do I do now? And so the main hurdle those people face is that they have no online presence, they have no technical ability, and they need some kind of process to follow, and that's what we can help them with. The other side is people who are very good at one aspect of their business but not on the rest. And I was saying about this different business environment 10 years ago or 12 years ago now, where you could rank on Google for writing a good article. Now it's not enough to just write a good article, you have to have the full package. And so we do have people that are maybe very good at generating traffic. They've got huge Instagram followings, they've got a great physique, and they know how to do the social media game, but they can't convert off the back of it. And those people actually do really well by just making a few little changes, because they can then direct and divert that traffic into making some sales. Or you might have people that do the opposite. They're excellent coaches, but they can't market themselves. So I think it's about finding what is somebody's weakness and how can you tweak their process to turn it into something that is a full-time income for them.
So what are the common misconceptions or the hurdles people kind of come up against that they then come to you for help for?
So, I mean, like link back to what Yusef was saying, I think while there are certainly new manifestations of situations, like ultimately fitness on the internet, like selling fitness on the internet, is the same now as it was back in 2008, really. Like, a common thing that we hear a lot at the moment is, oh, the market's more crowded than it's ever been. People, PTs are doing live workouts for free every day online. How can I compete with that? Like, getting a free workout or like buying an exercise DVD has always been available as like the free, cheap alternative, and yet the rest of the fitness industry is still in operation. So I think misconceptions are that two sides. One is like it's completely impenetrable and absolutely crowded and I can't get any clients. And generally when you strip it down, it's like, well, we're talking about maybe 30 people in the context of 2 billion on Facebook alone. So you can probably manage that without, overcoming that or creating the next wheel in the fitness industry. And then the second misconception is that it is just really simple. So, some people think it's impossible and some people think, I'll upload I'll put a Linktree link in my Instagram bio and do a discovery call, and then, before you know it, I've got clients. And I think there are people who do that and they manage to make a little bit of money doing it, but they're never going to get any kind of traction. It's not, it's kind of making a little bit of money on the side rather than building a business. So I think the thing that we help people do is just build something that will hopefully still be there in 5 years' time, because there's a lot of short-term strategies available. A lot of people are going after how do I make cash today rather than how do I build something that will still exist in a decade, maybe, no matter what the industry looks like at that point.
I think you made a good point there about people being scared of the saturation of the market. You go onto Instagram and you see that there are hundreds of thousands of people doing basically the same stuff, right? But what I think a lot of people get caught up in is the fact that they think they're not the one that somebody wants to look at. So yes, okay, you get someone who's been doing it for 10 years and they've got a great following and they're doing videos every day for free and whatever, and that's working for them. But what's to say that if you started doing the same thing, it wouldn't also get traction? That person might have a certain type of audience, but your audience from whatever you're doing might appeal to a certain niche. And the thing is, in today's world, a niche is actually so important, because if you can capture a niche and get those super fans, you could sell them shit on a plate and they'll buy it.
There's a great dating analogy for exactly that, which is people looking at other accounts and being like, oh well, they've completed it, so there's no point in me even entering the market. That's like seeing a couple and being like, oh well, that guy is obviously the perfect boyfriend and that's it. So he's won at boyfriending, and there's no point in me even trying. So yeah, I think recognizing that people connect with people, and Jonny mentioned this the other day, of like, people think online business is like this special world where the rules are totally different to offline, but it's still it's people at the end of the day. And so if you're able to connect with someone online or offline, then you can do the same thing. And some people might not resonate with someone who seems a bit rarefied, because they're just like, oh well, I can't even achieve that level of physique or lifts or whatever, and I prefer this person who is much more real to me.
Absolutely. There was a guy who I saw this weekend. I was on a Tony Robbins seminar this weekend, which, I am the first person to put my hand up and say I was slightly skeptical before I went, but actually it was one of the best things I've ever done. And there was a guy called Dean Gravioski, I can't remember how to pronounce it, probably butchered his surname, but he basically talks about how you get two types of buyers in the market. You get emotional buyers and logical buyers. And he broke it down so simply to say, like, you get some people who will watch an Instagram video, for example, and see someone, let's put it into fitness relations for a second, like sweating and getting a good workout, and they'll go, right, buy whatever you're selling. But then you get other people who go into that space of like, what am I getting from this? Like, how much is it? How long is it for? Like, why would I choose him over him? Like, whatever. And he said the way to battle those two people is the emotional buyers will buy anyway, because you've emotionally invested in what they want. But the logical buyers, you just have to basically bombard them with the questions that they're already going to ask. Or like answer anything that they potentially could ask you and beat them to it, so that they feel like you've already spoken to them and you're already in their head. And then they go through the process to buy whatever it is you're selling, and you'll come out the other side and you've got essentially someone you've qualified them almost without even talking to them, and then they buy your product. So it really isn't rocket science, but some people seem to get it so caught up in their head that it is this mystical world of online, as you said, Jonny, that people don't really understand how to even start doing it. So, if someone was starting out in business, whether it be as a PT, online, or anything, what would you say is the things that they need to know before going into it and getting stuck in, and without, being able to spend the next 5 years wondering how the hell they're doing?
So what you just described there of like being in someone's head, I think that's a pretty important, like, what's an interesting way of thinking about it, because it, when you strip back all the strategies and the funnels and the topics that people bring up when they talk about starting an online business, as Yusef said, ultimately it's just two people communicating through a screen, right? Two devices. So ultimately someone's going to be sat in the ad break or watching Netflix, scrolling through social media, and they'll see your thing for the first time, right? And generally speaking, you've got a couple of seconds to grab their attention. So that's why a niche is important, not because if you go after people named Mark who are between 30 or 31 and they work in a certain company, no one else is selling to them, so it's really easy. It's not that at all. It's just that if you can say something to Mark that makes him think like, shit, like I didn't really think about it like that before. I thought that this morning. You've kind of won his attention, or that person's attention, right? So if you don't have people like glaze over when the idea of niche or target market gets brought up, because we've all heard about it before, especially if you've done any kind of reading about business. But if you don't have that, and you do what most people do, so if you scroll through your Instagram, if you've got a few personal trainers on social media, generally what they're selling is broad, like, to anyone with a wallet or a purse, here's my fat loss thing, right? People know they want to lose weight. They don't need to be told that they want to lose weight. You're not like selling them something really innovative. They just don't know why they should listen to you, because you're just a PT. Like, it's easy for you. So I think just there's a quote from a guy called I can't remember his name. Not Dan Sullivan. There we go. he was like one of the like OGs in the online marketing world, who basically says the person who knows their customer the most will always win. So the more you understand about what it's like to be a certain person, the more likely you are to be able to win over that battle of like, who are they going to buy from, right? Who are they going to pick? Whether they're emotional or logical, they're gonna make a decision probably based on something that they can't really define or explain themselves. It's just like, oh, that person seemed good, right? How do you be that person? It's just by picking someone you know a lot about. So that's kind of if you get that right, the rest of it is much, much easier. If that's wrong, you can have the most complicated strategy and the best looking website and the fanciest logo, but you'll still probably never gain any kind of traction.
So a great example of that, I don't know if you've seen one of the Derren Brown pieces where he asks the people in the audience, there's maybe 30 of them, to all give him an item of their own clothing or like a lock of their hair or a bit of jewelry, something that's like meaningful to them and relates back to them, and he collects them all. And he goes away for a day or two, and he comes back and he's like, right, I've written you this document, it's in an envelope, and I've put it under each of your seats, and it's attached to the item that you gave me, and I've written some stuff about you that I feel like no one else will know. And everyone reads it, and they're like, oh my god, this is spot on, like this is exactly me. How have you done this? Like you've looked deep into my soul, and it turns out everyone has the same bit of paper. And it's just because Derren is one of these people who's an amazing copywriter, and he's amazing at understanding the human condition. And he wrote things like, your friends and family think that you're an extrovert, but actually you recharge sometimes on your own, and you often feel like people don't always get you. And it's like really generic stuff, but is all kind of just the basic human condition. And being able to do that, but within a niche, and attach a product to it, is exactly what you've just described there.
I love that story. I didn't know that about Derren Brown. That's I'm actually going to a talk of his in about 6 weeks' time from the How To Academy. He's doing a talk on his new book, Happiness or the sort of fulfillment or something like that. But anyway, I'm just looking forward to it. But you're absolutely right. There was the one that also comes to mind is the Simon Sinek TED Talk, where he talks about, why, and that's, why he bangs on about Apple. Obviously, it seems like that's his best example, but it's so true. If you get into the why around why someone is having problems, having challenges, having issues, you are so much more equipped to be able to give them the how and the what that you can do to help them. He goes even deeper into like the psychological brain and talks about how you can essentially get someone to do something by just understanding why they need it in the first place. I think it's absolutely fascinating. So what if you guys were going to take your course or take your advice and take what you know now and go back to the beginning, back when you were trying to sell patio heaters to the world, what would you do differently?
God.
So one thing that I think you do very well, Jack, is you've picked a platform and you've nailed it. So you've picked Instagram, and you've taken a model that works, and you've consulted experts and been like, right, this is what I need to be doing, and you've just gone straight for that. I think we had a lot of shiny object syndrome. We were trying to do everything at once, and funnily enough, when you try and run a podcast, YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, email list all at once, even when you're split between two people, everything gets diluted. So looking back, I wish that we'd been a bit more essentialist about it. The problem is, it's easy for us to say that now, but Snapchat isn't really a thing anymore. Or there's certain platforms that rose and fall, and it's very hard. If you really knew which one was going to be successful in 10 years' time, then you should have bought stock in it, and then you've set for life anyway. So it is a difficult one. I think doubling down on the things that are going to be around for a long time. So email, subject to the Lindy effect, isn't it? Like that email's been around for 20 years, and so it's probably going to be around for another 20 years. Instagram was quite new. It's a risky move to in 2008 to go all in on Instagram, but at the same time there's a high potential upside, just like with TikTok now, but then risk of it getting banned by Trump. So yeah, it's hard.
So then, okay, as another question on that, what would you say, taking what you know now and moving forward 10 years, what are you going to double down on? What's the thing that you think is worth spending more time on than other stuff?
It's funny because that's basically what we're doing this year, is looking back over the mistakes that we've done, and on micro and macro scale. And thank God we have a resident accountant who just tracks. He just has like everything just on a spreadsheet, tabulated, and formulas and things. And to say, this worked, this didn't. Let's double down on this. Let's ditch this, etc. And it just allows you to then keep doubling down on the things that work well.
So I think the principle that we apply a lot at the moment, that's probably over the last like year or so, as Yusef says, is basically just how do we do more of what's working and less of what isn't working. So like in Yusef's most recent podcast, he talks about like doubling down on things that are successful as a mental model to like, because ultimately all you can do
I didn't
is
know you listened to my podcast, Jonny.
just after we spoke, I've just listened to it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, no problem.
He's got it in the other ear.
But yeah, so it's all you have is the time in the day to allocate. So the question is, how do I allocate the time and the money and all those sorts of things to get the most out of that? And I think what we didn't used to do was we didn't used to really look at like, why are we doing this? So as Yusef said, it's like Snapchat. Why? Don't know, don't care. Just start a Snapchat. We better do it every day because that sounds like a good thing to do. And you can very quickly get swept up into all these things, like any new fad or any new platform, especially if there's a migration to it. It's very easy to think, well, if I don't do that, then I'm missing out. But if you can answer the question of like, well, why are we doing that? And then what are we looking for out of that? And can we measure that, whether it's working or not? Then quickly you can very quickly perform like 2-week tests on things, which we're doing a lot in the moment of, if we change this, if we do more of this or less of this, what happens? And you're able to basically inform your own business journey that way, because no one can really give you the answer. It's just people who are like, I guess in our position, like coaching other people, like we can only do that because we tried lots of stuff, right? So we can teach from that perspective. So someone else coaching you saying you should do like TikTok's great for coaches, like it may well have been when they ran their experiment. It may not be for you. So I think doing fewer of the way that you kind of, or the way I think we are moving more towards is try and have a reason why you're doing something. Is that when you do it, does that happen? If not, don't do it. Do more of the things that do achieve that outcome.
It's good advice. I think a lot of people listening to that, it sounds simple, but almost too simple. It's that whole thing of, as you said yourself, Yusef, at the beginning, you want to do everything. You want to be on every platform because you hear from every different person, I'm doing YouTube, I'm doing a podcast, I'm doing Facebook, I'm doing Instagram, whatever, because that's what's working for them. I think if you actually drove a little bit deeper into successful businesses, you'd see that they're not doing everything at the same time as much as everyone else. They're just doubling down on one or two things and then having a bit of a finger in the other ones just to keep a profile, if that's the case.
Yeah,
is that right?
I just read a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Great book.
It is great. It's after a friend of mine kept berating me for reading it, for not reading it. He was like, this is the book that you need to read right now. And I was like, right, fine, I'll do it. And he's absolutely right. And it's exactly this concept. It's the fact that all of these things, all these options they're good. Like there's no, it's not like one of them's terrible and you shouldn't be doing it at all. It's that they're all good options, but you need to sacrifice the good for the great. And that's difficult because it's painful. And especially if you've got big egos like us, you want to be like, oh no, it's fine, I can handle it all, like because you think like, oh no, I'm capable of just juggling it all. And what happens is we're in a limited physical body that just can't do all those things at once. Like I wish we could just copy paste and split test ourselves multiple times, but the closest thing we can do to that is Jonny's approach of 2-week tests in sequence, but we can't do it in parallel, at least not yet, until Elon Musk invents some kind of brain implant.
I like the split test. I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's interesting, as you said, earlier. Instagram has been my platform of choice probably for the last, I reckon, 18 months or so since I've been back on it. Because I had a 18-month break from Instagram, which was awesome. But it's a whole other
bet.
story. It was amazing. But yeah, I actually wrote an article recently on it, which is something I'll go into in a minute. But yeah, I'm finding that the Lindy effect is obviously a lot more powerful with things like articles, podcasts, actually getting stuff that stays on the internet and that people can search for and find, And so I see lots of people spending a lot of time and energy on an Instagram video post, whatever it might be, for it to then just be lost 3 seconds later. And unless you've already got a big following, it's really hard to get that stuff to the eyes of the people that you want to see, unless you're paying for advertising. Wouldn't it be a better use of your time to do something like writing an article or doing a podcast or maybe a YouTube video, and actually having something that people can find a lot easier than doing something on social media? Because as you said, Instagram, if it went tomorrow, what would people do?
So because we interact with so many other business owners every week, we do have a few clients who are like above the 10,000 followers on Instagram mark. And a couple of them this week have said they've noticed a marked decrease in engagement since Reels were brought out. So I don't know when this podcast will get released, but when Reels were added on Instagram, they've noticed that their engagement's fallen. So, I guess who does that matter for? It matters for people who are making a living from like monetizing their following. So influencers selling like ad space basically to brands who want their followers to see it. But you're dead right, and I think something that Yusef and I talk about a lot is this like search content versus social content battle. A good example of this is our fitness podcast. We don't upload that many episodes to it at the moment. It's maybe like one every 2 weeks or so, based on what we used to do. But those episodes are still getting like thousands of downloads a month because of the way that search works versus Instagram. Like imagine if every Instagram or every social post you put up there was still getting today like hundreds of likes a day. It would just be this weird situation. And people hear that and go, oh, that would never happen. But that's exactly what happens with search stuff. So with a really good article or with a really good podcast, that's what happens. And like Yusef's Ramadan article gets a huge, crazy spike in traffic once a year, every year, without fail, because of search.
It's actually scary at times because it's like you've got this like messy teenage bedroom that you've just abandoned, and every year loads of like National Trust visitors come in and they go, ooh, and they're taking photos, and like you're like, oh, right, I need to quickly tidy that. So it's out there on the internet, and like you can't stop it getting traffic by that point.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I read Medium every single morning because I think it's great, and I don't tend to read them all. I tend to just save the ones into pocket that I like and read them later. But it's amazing how many I actually look at, and I look at the date in which they were published, and some of them were published like a year and a half ago, and I'm like, but that's so relevant today. And it's exactly what you're saying, Jonny, about having that searchable content versus social content. I think that the world's not going to get less social, even though I think we all know we should get less social. I think it's going to become, COVID is a great example of that. We are all going more digital, and I think that there's going to be even more opportunity for people to connect online. I think the challenge is going to be able to how to cut through the noise and actually have the right signal that says, listen to me, not this other bullshit that's going on over here, and therefore kind of move in that direction, which I think personally is going to be the way of going back to basics, where it's like have a website, and that website has all of your stuff on it, which people can go and find, rather than having 20 different accounts on different socials, which then lead to your website.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's next for Propane? Where are you guys heading next? Are you going to try and conquer America? I've heard they're having some winters coming up soon with the patio heaters might need replacing at some stage. No, where's what's going on for you next year? Have you got, you've spent a lot of this time working on future plans. Is there anything that you can share with us?
So I think, has your audio cut out, Yusef?
Oh no, I was muted, but go ahead.
I was like, Yusef's like midpoint, but so that's weird.
I was just practicing.
That's what you've been doing all of lockdown, practicing your Zoom calling.
Yeah, for when I do speak, I'll be really good.
Online seminars. That's coming next.
Silent ones as well, the best kind. So I suppose we've been going through a phase at Propane more recently where we've been, I guess, looking at hiring people. So it's weird because I remember hearing about hiring when we started. However, when we started like taking business more seriously, thinking like, oh, that's boring. Like no one will never get to that point. But when you get to that point, you realize that actually, like developing on that side of things does make you a lot more flexible. So I think the way I see things, and I don't know whether Yusef will agree, but we probably like to say what we're doing next is really hard to do because it depends on what the market's like. It depends on what's needed. I guess it depends on like whether we ever get to the point where people are like, guys, do you do any patio heaters? Like, is there any chance I can buy one? You know, I think we have very much always adapted to what is the market asking us for? Because if people, that's generally the best direction to pivot in, rather than thinking like I could maybe try and sell some patio heaters to these fitness clients. Think, well, what do the people actually ask? We may continue doing what we're doing for forever. It may pivot, but I think the thing that remains is like your skills as a business owner, the team you have, the software you have, the digital assets you've built up over time, your search-based content, and like the audience you have and what they think of you. So I think we always like try and focus on the basic stuff, and then if things change, I guess we'll change with it. But it's like building the core of that's always going to be the same.
Audience side of it is the interesting thing, because I think if a lot of businesses are going south because of what's happening in the world, but actually none of them are actually asking their customers what's going south or what's happening with them. And it's a perfect opportunity for anyone who's looking to start a business, I think, but also to kind of reinvent their business if it was going a bit stagnant, and ask their customers, what is it that you want? Like, what is it can I help you with? What value can I give to you and help you get through this time? And the great thing about the world is that we're so much more online, so it doesn't take 5 minutes to knock up a type form or a Google form and just send customers a bunch of questions and go, hey, how are you feeling about X, Y, and Z? Get the data back and then just create something out of that data. I've seen it happen so many times with friends of mine and also people I follow on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's actually amazing how resourceful people can be in times where we actually have limited resources, I suppose, because we're not able to actually go out and do normal things and meet people and do all that sort of stuff. So I think it's gonna be interesting times ahead. Before we go, I wanted to ask you guys what you're reading at the moment. I know you're both big readers, and I'm always interested to hear what you guys have got on the go. So Jonny, what are you reading at the moment?
Nothing.
No,
so this
All
is
right.
this is a
better question. What have you reread for the 7th time?
Well, so I guess I'll answer your question in a slightly different way. So Yusef and I speak about this quite a bit as well. I'm just going through a period of time at the moment where I'm actually trying to remove things from what I'm doing. So like end of 2019, I was reading a lot. Like my habit, I was adding new habits in every day. I was making my morning routine more and more elongated. And I was just generally like trying to do more things, like read more books, do more courses. And I think I just wanted to see what would happen if I stopped like most of that and focused on like, what did I actually learn from doing all of this? And how can I just put the same time and effort and attention to things that are like the real needle movers, that like, if I did this for a year, would I notice? Yes, probably. So I'm not saying that reading's bad. I don't think that at all. But I suppose Yusef and I have read so many things at this point that I certainly feel like I need to pivot and do more of the doing, or like the applying, the learning. Because you take books like Deep Work, for example. Like if you just took that book and just did that, you'd probably see quite a big impact, right? But most people read Deep Work and go, yeah, great. Right, now on to something else. Right. And so I'm just kind of going back over things like Deep Work and Digital Minimalism, Atomic Habits, like the operating system style books, thinking, how do I make that part of what I do before then trying to read the next thing? So that might not be the answer you wanted, but
no, it's good. It's always interesting hearing about what people use books for, not just for the sake of reading it. I think there's a big, especially at the beginning of lockdown, there was this whole sort of internet battle of like, I've read 10 books this week and I've read 50 books, and it's great, all well and good if you read that many books. And I appreciate that's amazing. I'd love to be able to read that many books, but also what are you actually taking in from those books? And I agree with you, Jonny. Reading a book and then actioning it is way more valuable than just reading 10 books about whatever. So yeah. I get that. Yusef, what are you reading at the moment?
So yeah, Jonny's always been the North Star for implementation. And I think having been through med school, it makes you a very good gobbler. It makes you great at like just taking on lots of information. But yeah, the actual doing of it kind of falls aside. And something like digital minimalism, I know a guy who read it. He's not a big reader. He just got rid of all of his social media overnight, and he was like, "Oh, I did it." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Well, that's what the book was about, so I just did it." And he didn't see the. Whereas for the rest of us, we read it, don't do anything about it, and then just feel like a twat because now you just know how bad it is, but you haven't done anything about it. So it's a really important point to just stop and be like, hang on, what am I reading this for? What's the problem I'm trying to solve? And so my consumption of information has split more into if it's actionable just in time learning, then I'm like, right, identify a problem, learn something about it, go and do it. So the last thing I consumed was a YouTube course, for example, addressing a specific problem or bottleneck in my life. But for reading for fun, I tend to so now I'm trying to substitute my Netflix habit with my girlfriend with a audiobook habit, because we both just feel like you finish work and you sit down together and you realize how many hours of Netflix you've accumulated, and you're like, I've not really got anything to show for this. So we went through our Amazon wish list and we're like, okay, which books overlap and are on both of our wish lists? Like, obviously I've got some weird ass books on my wish list that she would not be interested in, and she's got some kind of rom-com stuff that I'm just like, what? But there is an overlap, and so we're like, right, well, let's just do that. And we're getting through books together, which feels like a much more fulfilling way to get through things. So the last book we listened to together was Tuesdays with Maury, which is written by Mitch Albom. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I haven't, no.
I think he's one of these like Silicon Valley writer, startup-y, podcasty kind of people. But yeah, there's just about an old professor of his who was dying of motor neuron disease and was sharing his kind of final lessons from his deathbed. Quite a kind of heartwarming book.
I like it. I'm gonna have to get that one out and get that reading. I'm a big fan of reading. I like reading a lot, but what I tend to do is find what kind of repeats. You know, a lot of the stuff that you find in books tends to repeat itself if it's good value. So well, I think
that's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? As you said, that like once you've read the top 10 business books, you've kind of got 90% of the core concepts, and then most of them are just repeating those concepts or marginal gain.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's like success leaves clues. So you kind of like, I then note take quite crazily on pen and paper with what works for me. And then I tend to then, when I read it again in something else that I've picked up, I think to myself, well, you know, they've said it as well. So it's kind of, you know, goes to the top of the list type thing, but it's good. Guys, I'm conscious of time, and I'm understand that you guys are busy men, and thank you so much for spending this afternoon with me. Before we go, where can guys find you? Where can people go to find out a bit more about you two and Propane and everything else that you guys are up to?
So if they want to hear more about the business side of things, you can go to propane-business.com. The fitness side of things is just propanefitness.com. And those are basically the two kind of hubs where everything is. So both sites have articles, more information on like how to work with us in both sides. Both podcasts are on each website. So that's probably the best place to start.
Fantastic. Good stuff. And personally, if they want to touch base with you on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, wherever else they can find you, where's best?
So we don't do Snapchat anymore, thankfully.
Oh, shame.
But just at Propane Fitness on the main ones we're active on are Twitter and Instagram now.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been amazing to have you on. And look, I look forward to hopefully doing this again at some point in the future. Speak to you soon.
Pleasure, man.
Thanks for having
us.
Cheers.